Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Community Services Committee meeting of October 23rd, 2023 to order. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurok, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara-Grimsby stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? No. Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda, and our clerk has an item that she'll be speaking on.
Through you, Chair. I'm just noting an administrative error. There is a resolutions item outlined under item section 9 and section 10.1 of the agenda. So just with that redundancy there, I'm just looking to remove item 10.1 so that we just have the one resolutions there.
Can I get a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda? Okay, moved by Councillor Korstanji, seconded by Member Bennett. Resolved that the agenda for October 23rd, 2023 Community Services Committee be approved as amended. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Item 5, receipt of previous minutes. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive the previous minutes for Grimsby Green Community Services and Culture? Moved by Councillor Howe, seconded by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the following minutes be received: September 22nd, 2023, Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, September 26th, 2023, Community Services Committee, and October 5th, 2023, Culture Advisory Committee. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. We do not have any delegations or consent reports, so moving on to item 8, discussion reports. We have a discussion report regarding a support for a Remembrance Day road closure. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get report DCS 2346 on the floor for discussion? Moved by Member Bennett, seconded by Member Breather. And Director Sweeney, if you'd like to start us off with that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep my remarks brief. I think it's fairly straightforward. We are just going to work with the Grimsby Legion to close that section of road running right alongside the Murray Street Park there, the Grimsby Museum park space there, right where the cenotaph is. If you've been to the Remembrance Day ceremony that they do, it's often very, very well attended, so it's not unusual to see people standing in and around that area to make sure that they can hear and participate in the ceremony that day. So we're just looking to close the road to ensure safety. The Legion also uses that as part of their walk-up, so it just gives a little extra space to a small park area. So we'll be applying for the permit on their behalf, and we will manage the closure. And we're also working with the Legion to help with other logistics for the event, the sound, and those types of things as well.
So open the floor for discussion. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No? Okay. Resolved that report DCS 2346, Grimsby Remembrance Day 2023 event road closure support dated October 24th, 2023 be received, and that the Community Services Committee recommend Council endorse the event related road closure on Main Street West on November 11th, 2023 to be forwarded for approval by the Niagara region. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Resolutions. We have a resolution from Member Bennett on a municipal indoor pool. Can I get a mover and a seconder to get this item on the floor for discussion? Okay, moved by Member Bennett, Breather, and seconded by Councillor DeFlavio. Okay, whereas the Town of Grimsby's Master Plan for Parks, Recreation and Culture completed in 2019 identified a municipal indoor pool as the #1 priority, and this priority was not included in the Peach King Centre expansion plans. And whereas the following motion voted upon unanimously in favor by the previous council on September 7th, 2021 by Reginald Frick is no longer valid as a result of a new council being elected in the fall of 2022 and needs to be addressed as part of future recreation planning. And whereas in the Town of Grimsby is a vibrant, growing community with pent-up demand for year-round aquatic programs for all ages of residents, and whereas in the Town of Grimsby, Swimming is a popular activity that is enjoyed by all ages, and indoor pools should be a core recreational health-related service. And whereas in recent surveys around the country, 60% of households participate in swimming at indoor aquatic facilities, including Learn to Swim, special interests, example, diving, synchronized swimming, etc., swimming leadership, aquatic fitness, and community rentals, and whereas currently the Lions Club community pool is only accessible 2 to 3 months of the year, and because it's an outdoor pool, is also hampered by weather and is a closure factor even in summer. The YMCA is private, expensive, and inaccessible for residents. Therefore, our residents must travel outside of Grimsby in the off-season and be waitlisted in other nearby communities for some programming, example, swim lessons, competitive sports, and whereas learning how to swim can be a lifesaver, and death by drowning continues to be one of the top killers of kids in the summer months. And while accidents do happen, giving children a place to take swimming lessons close to their home can save lives in the future. And whereas our community is on Lake Ontario, and according to the national statistics, drowning is the second leading cause of unintentional injury-related death to children ages 1 through 14 years. So it is crucial that all kids learn how to swim at a young age. And whereas indoor aquatic programs can also help people who have arthritis, diabetes, and other related chronic conditions who are normally prevented from doing heavy land workouts. An indoor year-round swimming pool and aquatic program is the most recognized activity for people with these ailments because water supports 90% of the body and provides other mental and low-impact physical therapeutic benefits. And whereas the cost of public indoor aquatics facilities takes into consideration access to government building operating grants, corporate private sponsorships, as well as partnerships with other municipalities in West Niagara. As the combined population of West Niagara is approaching 80,000 with no municipal or regionally operated indoor aquatic facilities in the area. Sharing mutually beneficial resources is encouraged for cost sharing to provide affordable services. Therefore, be it resolved that the Community Services Committee ask Council to direct staff to provide a report on costing of an indoor pool / aquatic facility for the town of Grimsby and possible sites, including a redesign of Grimsby's Peach King Center expansion. Okay. So again, we'll put this discussion on the floor. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
No.
Yes, this is the resolution now, yes. Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. So I'm torn on this one because I'm strongly in favor of a pool, but we've talked about it on many occasions, the cost of a pool, and I think staff has addressed the issue of a pool and the concerns about the ability of Grimsby to keep 2 pools going. You know, the YMCA, despite the fact, and I agree with everything in the resolution, the YMCA is a private facility. It's cost prohibitive for a lot of families. There are subsidy programs, but they're kind of difficult to navigate, and you have to give up a lot of personal information for those kinds of programs. So that being said, I don't know that, like I'd like to hear from our director and see how she feels about it. If it is going to require costs, like outside consulting and things like that, then I won't support this. If you think it's something we could do in-house, kind of getting a generalized pricing, the reality is the Peach King Center's process has started. So I don't think that adding this to the Peach King Center is, and we've talked about the lack of space here and the inability to house it here because of parking and other things that are prohibiting that. So yes, it's something I'd like to consider, but I'm also realistic about the fact that I don't know that this is something that is going to be something within the scope of what we can do as a municipality without serious subsidies from other levels of government. It might be something that we need to partner with other municipalities to do, because if Grimsby were to build a pool, it would be similar to the Y in that it would be the pool for all of West Niagara. It wouldn't be a Grimsby pool, it would be a West Niagara pool. And unlike Hamilton, which is a single-tiered municipality, we don't get money from the region for recreational facilities. So when the city of Hamilton makes a decision to build, I was having this conversation last week with somebody. The city of Stoney Creek has Brewster Pool. They have the Stoney Creek Pool, which is in downtown Stoney Creek near the old Stoney Creek Arena. And they have the Valley Park Recreation Center, which are all technically in Stoney Creek. 3 pools for that municipality. Grimsby has 0. And Stoney Creek is actually talking about building another one in Winona, at the old Winona Recreation Center. So that would be 4 in Stoney Creek. Now, on the positive side, if they built one at the Winona Recreation Center, that would mean that Grimsby residents would have a much shorter wait list to wait to get onto that program. I still think, though, at some point as a municipality, we have to look at this and say, are we going to step up to the plate and do this? Because we've gotten to a point where we're a big enough municipality where we kind of have a responsibility, like the member Bennett mentions in her resolution or her motion. We kind of have a responsibility to provide people, from an equity perspective, the ability to swim in a pool, because otherwise it's just people who can afford to have a pool in their yard who are swimming in pools. From an equity perspective for students who are learning to swim, because I can tell you that as a teacher, when I take my class swimming, there are grade 2 and 3 classes that are there in the Swim to Survive program before us or after us that are learning how to swim because they don't have access to swim lessons. They don't have access to these other things that we're talking about. If you are somebody who can afford swim lessons, this is irrelevant for you. If you're somebody who has a pool in your yard, probably you've gotten your kids swim lessons so that they can learn to survive running out of time, okay? So if it's not a huge cost, looking at what this will cost and having a plan in place so that if something comes forward as far as provincial funding or federal funding is concerned, having a shovel-ready proposal, because we've been asked in the past to have that, might be something we might want to invest in so that way if there is money available, we're ready to go to pull the, to get that ball rolling. So not a bad idea. I'm afraid of the costs, which I'm always afraid of, right? The last time around, I know I'm out of time, the last time around, when we did it 20 years ago, the proposed cost, besides the cost of the pool, was $300 and something thousand a year. I would imagine it's probably double that now to staff a pool. And so that is something that we have to talk about, because a $600,000 levy would be a 5% tax increase for every taxpayer every year in the town of Grimsby. Those are significant costs that need to be talked about. We can't just talk about a pool as if it's some sort of, it is a dream and it's a great thing, but every part of that process has to be discussed, and the finances are a very important part of that process. So if our director has any thoughts about the costing and things like that, I had a lot to say without a lot of questions, but if you can address the cost issue, and if we could do that without consulting and kind of an in-house approach, then that might be a place to start.
Director Sweeney?
Thank you, Chair. So just 2 items on that. With the Peaching Center, as you said, unfortunately, or fortunately in some ways that we're progressing, but to halt that project now and go back and swap it out would be extremely challenging. We also, when we applied for the grant, it's for a very specific scope, so we could be in jeopardy of that grant. So to just lump it into that existing expansion project would be very difficult to do. With respect to the costing, there's some costing we could provide you probably fairly easily in terms of other facilities and what their current costs are. I would caution, though, we can't just look at the cost of building the facility, as you alluded to, and you're absolutely right. We really need to look at it from a full feasibility standpoint to really understand what's the impact. So it's the cost of building it, but it is the cost of operating it. And then in addition to that, it's, do we have the capacity to operate it? Finding lifeguards in communities right now, just to even, work in outdoor pools is so difficult. Can Grimsby support both of those pools? What happens if we have 2 pools? Do we just split that? So I think there is a lot to unpack. So while I would say there's some pieces we could get to you fairly easily, I don't think they really give you that fulsome picture that you're really going to need to really make a decision on where you'd want to go forward with it. That said, as well, it is something that we hear about quite often. We get a lot of phone calls about it. We are often asked about indoor pools, and certainly the master plan did speak quite loudly about that interest. And so I think it may be worth having some discussion at the council table at some point is what is the right time to consider feasibility. Maybe it's not now, maybe it is later on down the road, maybe it's in the next iteration of the master plan. Those are all things I think council can decide as well as to how they'd want to go forward. I hope that's helpful.
So we're still on the first round. There's 2 rounds, so does anybody else want to ask a question in this round? Councillor Howe?
And this will hurt, but I'll echo everything that Councillor DeFlavio said, but in a little bit shorter time. Anyways, but we take a look at ourselves at 30,000, and we've got down the road about another 30,000. Maybe at some point in time, there is one larger community than us, and as we've talked about, our adjoining neighbors. And then you got enough numbers, and it seems, certainly there are pools in communities smaller than us, where it's a community, but from a big draws from a big area. But from the idea of just 30,000, at this point in time, certainly, without a whole bunch of dollars floating in, unfortunately, it's just not the time.
Member Bennett?
Thank you, Councillor Charrois. I just wanted to clarify a couple of points. First of all, this is a motion that was basically tweaked from one that Reginald Frake did, and the Peach King Center part, that was part of his motion, and I just left it in. And because I know I've talked a bit to Director Sarah Sweeney about other sites as well. And at one time, I know Southward was not an option, but it might be an option just because of the water situation. Talked about GSS. As far as that goes, this is also a motion just to cost a pool, not to approve it, because it was, I just feel because, as Sarah said, it's the number one priority in the master plan, and the master plan spoke quite loudly to that. If Grimsby continues, and well, the surrounding area continues to just put it to one side without any vision or commitment, that number one priority will never come to fruition, right? And like Councillor DeFlavio was saying, like in Stony Creek, their master plan for that site in Winona, they're not thinking of building that for 9 to 18 years, but it's part of their vision, because right now Brewster Pool was actually gifted to, I believe, the city of St. Catharines. I think it might have been from the schools, but I'd have to check again with that. So it was never meant to be a recreational center, right? So, and there's some parking issues there as well. But I think that operational costs are a big factor, and I'd be interested to know like how they compare to, say, operating skating rinks, for instance, and some of the other programs we have available, and how that would compare to the population, different populations it serves, because the indoor pool is still the most inclusive, right? It includes people from 0 to 100, whereas I would say the skating population looking for more, from walking to not walking, right? So that narrows down the scope of that. You may raise some good points about equity too. I know people who have supported the Peach King Center are people who have indoor pools, or who have outdoor pools rather, in their backyards. And so they have that available to them. And there are, when I'm speaking to the Ministry of Culture and Recreation, they're talking to them on the phone is a lot different than sending them an email. And the one person I spoke to was really helpful. There's a lot of operational grants available as well, but we can't do this, just as a town. I know the magic number in Orillia is 30,000, But I think the greater sort of issue is that we're looking at a population closer to 80,000 that doesn't have an indoor pool, combined with Lincoln and West Lincoln, right? And again, all their facilities are meeting the same demographic as well as we are. So I think, there has to be a lot of, the costing has to take in consideration sponsorships, grants, all those different pieces for it to work, because if it's not going to, it has to work fiscally. It has to, because the cost of living is just going through the roof, right? But I do think if we are going to be spending money in recreation, all things considered, we have to have that vision, commitment, and include a bigger population. And like Councillor Costangi said the last meeting, with the increase in condos, people don't have the backyards, right? They don't have access to even having the option to build an outdoor pool in their backyards. The cost of land is skyrocketing, and that's also an issue. Where are we going to build this, right? Because land is going through the roof, costs are going through the roof, and the longer you put it off, the more expensive it's going to become. So I just still think that, the people and the residents in Grimsby are very vocal about it in the master plan, on Facebook, on social media. And I just, even at that last meeting, even though it wasn't well attended, about the Peach King Center, there's still a sticky on the wall, like, what, no indoor pool? Like, had nothing to do with that. I had nothing to do with, and all those comments on Facebook, I made sure everyone in the room knew that. That's right. It's like, no, I know, I thought about that. How could I? No. But, but a lot of the people there were the architects, were the people from the town. There's very few people from the public. So. But strategic growth, I think, I keep coming back to that. Those are the two key words.
Does anybody want to ask another question before I give my 2 cents? No? Okay. So I know we've had this conversation before during the election. You'd asked me if I had supported this, and my answer is still very much the same as it was back then, as far as it's a financial issue for me right now. We do have the Peach King Center. That's a priority. I would like to see it come to fruition the way it's designed right now. This isn't something that I feel, if we were in a potential amalgamation situation with West Lincoln, and Lincoln, I could see this as a possibility for sure, but for 30,000 people to have to absorb the cost of a pool, I just feel is out there. However, I do, want to honor the fact that you have this motion that the last council didn't follow through with. So I'm just wondering though, if because Director Sweeney had indicated this is outside the scope of the Peach King Center project, if we could possibly do a friendly amendment, taking that one last line out that asks for including a redesign of Grimsby's Peach King Center expansion, if we could just take that out. So I would need your okay. And then Councillor DeFlavio, you're okay since you seconded? Perfect, can we do that? Excellent.
Through you, Chair, since you've already read the resolution, I think everyone's okay with
I am not going to read
not
this again.
rereading it.
Okay.
So that said, what I've done is just removed including a redesign of the Grimsby's Peach King Center expansion. So we'll just call the question.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. All right, so we do not have any correspondence, other business. Is there any other business pertaining to the committee? Councillor Howe.
If I can, through you, Chair. Earlier today, I emailing a couple of emails with Director Sweeney. I asked her to just give the committee and probably the lay members, the members of council, we were there, but just a little bit of background as to, what's happened with the 40 Mile. I don't know if anybody's heard anything, but to the bridge down there. And that was the one. And the second question I was going to ask is, where do we stand in respect to tendering for the Peach King Center going out? So those two areas.
Director Sweeney?
Through you, Chair. Sure, I'm happy to give an update. So I'll maybe just give a little bit of background, just in case that's helpful for our community members as well. So the 40 Mile Creek Bridge, hopefully you're familiar with where that is. It's down by the pump house location. That bridge has been there for quite a long time and is very, very well used. In 2021, it was determined to be in poor condition through an engineering assessment, and we did close it for safety reasons. In 2021, we did also intend to proceed with a concept plan for the bridge. In 2022, we actually moved into combining those pieces into doing the concept and the design together, because we just realized that doing two procurements was going to be a little bit more cumbersome, and we would roll it into one. So we did do the concept piece and the design all together, as well as a lot of consultation, because it is, the creek along there is also part of NPCA. So there's quite a bit involved in terms of what the permissions are and what we need to do. So we were able to procure a design firm in 2022 and worked on that for quite a length of time, quite a number of staff working on that to get a design for the bridge, which we did present in March of this year to Committee of the Whole at that time in terms of the bridge design. At the end of August of this year, we did have the procurement process completed for the bridge. We had 6 people submit, or 6 companies submit proposals. 3 of them we moved forward through the project scoring, and the low bid of the proponent pool did exceed the budget estimate. So October 11th, just 2 weeks ago, we did attend, our staff did attend the Finance Committee meeting requesting a budget amendment of $95,000 so that the bridge could proceed. That would bring the total project value to $650,000, which includes everything. So that was the design work, the permits, demolition, tree assessment, all of the ramping, which is quite significant down there, the site protection, restoration, and the bridge construction. And that resolution was approved at the Finance Committee meeting. On October the 16th, there was a motion brought forward at the meeting, and it was approved by Council to defer the project until future prioritization can be completed. The motion highlighted several concerns related to the town of Grimsby's strategic priorities, a funding shortfall in the Peach King expansion, and the potential impact on future projects and tax increases. So the resolution did propose a deferral of the 40 Mile Creek Bridge project until a comprehensive assessment of all strategic priorities with estimated costs could be completed, and additionally, it was recommended that staff present alternatives to mitigate the funding shortfall through spending cuts. So that's where we are today, and staff, we are working on preparing a report for the next council meeting just to make sure we align what the next steps will be and how we proceed with this project. But I will give you just a little bit of overview of where we are looking to proceed. So with that council direction, we will, once the minutes are passed at the next meeting, we would be canceling the procurement for the bridge construction. So the capital project can be deferred, but the procurement for the bridge does need to be canceled if the minutes are approved. So that's, and then there's about $62,000 that we've spent so far in the design and the concept work for that. We will also have to conclude the contract with the design firm, because part of that scope of work did include project management of the actual construction as well. So we will have to settle up that contract in the agreed upon terms. The safety of the bridge does remain our concern for us, and so the next step would be, I think with the wording of the resolution there, it will take some time to review those priorities. And then additionally, if the project were to proceed, we now have to redo a procurement, potentially have to do some design work again as well, and depending on how that goes, might take some time. And then there are just very specific windows that we're able to do this work as well because of the in-water requirements for the creek. So we expect it would take quite some time to be able to move it forward if it was eventually approved again. So we would like to do some work to make that bridge further unusable, because people continue to find ways, because it is quite popular. So we would be asking to do some removal of the ramps, but actually leave the bridge intact. And the hope is that if the majority of the bridge is still intact, we wouldn't need to do an environmental assessment if we were to later proceed with the bridge, because that probably will cost quite a bit of money and take also quite a bit of time if we had to do that. So we'd be looking at spending approximately $20,000 or $30,000 to be able to remove all the ramping, and that would really stop people from being able to use the bridge at all. The one piece I guess I'll throw out is if the bridge were to fail further, it's possible we would need to escalate the removal of the bridge. And the estimate cost just to remove the bridge, if we didn't construct it, actually could be in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $300,000. And again, the cost for the bridge, I know it's very expensive. And a lot of it has to do with the site conditions. It's a very difficult site to access. It's a very sensitive site to access. There's quite a number of fish species in the creek, so we really do need to make sure we're, complying with all the requirements as to how we are working in and around the creek area. I think that's all I have for notes for that. Yeah, and just lastly, the design was, the design was prepared. We really did try to balance a cost-conscious design, but we also really wanted to make sure we build a bridge that was really going to be long-lasting, well-suited to the space, and also something that everybody could engage with. So we did take some extra efforts to make sure it could be accessible and something that many could use. The bridge that we were designing, we were hoping would be able to last for a good 50 years. And again, it's knowing that getting in and out of that space is very difficult. So once that report is prepared, I'm happy to share that with all of the committee as well, just so you're aware of what's going to council. So maybe pause there if there's questions about that, and then I'm happy to address the Peachtree Center question as well.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a few questions through you. So the total cost, did you say was $650,000 of the project? And that's with and it was a $95,000 difference between what was budgeted and what the ask was? So I have to apologize because I misunderstood what was being, this wasn't, the information that we were given at council was not clear. Like what you gave us tonight was very clear, and the process was really well spelled out. I mean, if you could put that in writing, that would be great. I would ask, maybe our deputy clerk can answer procedurally. Can we go back? Because if it's a motion to defer, does it require 2/3 majority? Like, what do we need to do to get this back on the floor? I think the sunk cost is an important part of what you talked. There's already money that's been put out. Is the cost of removal part of that $650,000? So that's another cost that needs to be considered. So all of that, I think, really needs to be spelled out. So you're nodding yes. I just want to, if you want to answer, if you want to respond, and then I'll ask a couple of other questions.
Through the chair, so yes, the $650,000 is everything for the project, as I said. So, and that is inclusive of all the money spent to date as well. So it includes all the design costs, the permitting costs, which we've already obtained, and it includes all of the demolition, the site restoration, tree assessment, tree protection, all of the things that would be part of that project. The one other comment I'll just make is, I know there's the procedural process that you asked. The other question that we have asked to the vendor, and I haven't heard, is if we even can proceed. We'll make sure we know that answer in time for the report, because we're running very tight windows, so we do need to find out if that even would be a possibility.
I would, sorry, can I just comment first, Katie? I was very disappointed in this decision. Councillor Korstanji and I were both Ward 3 councillors. This was very important to us. This is one of the projects that we hear about all the time from our constituents. It was probably my number one thing that I wanted to accomplish in Ward 3. And it was just ripped out, kind of the rug torn beneath us. Didn't know, we were not allowed to debate it, which was also disheartening, because $95,000, we just shut this project down, which I thought, wasn't the right thing to do for us, if we could just have advocated for our constituents. This was also a decision that the Finance Committee, when it came a few days earlier, it was a unanimous decision by the Finance Committee. The chair did not discuss it in that way, so there's a lot of things that I think if we could have gone back and done it differently, I would have liked to have seen that. So if there's a way that we can do this as a reconsideration, Katie, if you can discuss, that'd be excellent.
Through you, Chair. So you put it perfectly. This would be a motion to reconsider brought forward. So since it's a motion to reconsider brought forward at a subsequent meeting and not at the same meeting, it would require a notice of motion. But the motion to reconsider a matter shall only be filed by a member who voted on the prevailing or the majority side of the original motion.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I'm happy to bring forward that notice of motion. If the committee agrees, I don't want to, but I think when we make a mistake, it's important that we acknowledge it, and I very clearly misunderstood what we were voting on that night, so I apologize for doing that, because I was under the impression that we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, not $95,000, and if I'd known that it was $95,000, frankly, and if we'd had the chance to discuss it, or maybe if we'd gotten more information, my vote would have gotten differently. I don't know that would have changed the vote that night, but I know that it would have changed my vote. So I apologize that I got it wrong. And you've pretty made, Director Sweeney's done a really good job of outlining the process and how it went, how it went, and I didn't know that it was a $95,000 difference. So I'm happy to, I don't know if Katie can help me through the process of the notice of motion, what I need to do, if it's, or maybe Sarah or whoever, but I'm happy to bring it forward because I was one of the people that voted on it. It has to be somebody that voted in favor. I don't know that it will be successful, but I think that if our director spells it out in the way that it was spelled out tonight, that it's a $95,000 difference in the budget. The other thing that I was going to mention through you, Chair, was, and maybe Director Sweeney can answer this, that $95,000, while it will have to come out of town money, I really feel like any future development on the Strikes bowling alley site would be subject to development charges that we could, I don't know if you can retroactively collect development charges when that site is developed, but this is certainly something that would benefit that site and would be very clear that from a development charges study perspective, to put that into context for people, when we do our development charges study review, we cost projects like this, and we put that back, a percentage of that could be put back on the developers based on how much they're going to use that thing. And this bridge will be used heavily by anybody who lives in that project in the future. So I think that that's something that we should look at, future development charges, if we could, whether it's use reserve money and put money back in the reserve, or however we can do that, but maybe talk to our finance department and find a way to do that, because I really believe that development charges would be the way to get that extra $95,000 very easily on this site. It seems like a no-brainer because any development on that Strike site is going to heavily use this bridge. So I don't know if that's something you want to address, or thanks.
Director Sweeney, if you can actually just address how much we have in reserves for that parkland that we have as well.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. I will just have to find it. I don't know if I have it up right now, but I do know the number is over $6 million. It was in the report as well. I don't have the specific number, but it is over $6 million. Just with respect to the development charge question, if it's not in the current DC study, I don't know if we can do that. However, I will take that back and just double check that there isn't anything in there that could be used. But it would need to probably be in the existing study. So I will take it away and just take a look. And certainly if the time came along between, constructing it and now as well, if it were to proceed, we would look for any other opportunities as well if we could for funding.
Councillor Cristangi?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just to confirm, so I make sure I understand what I'm hearing, is that canceling the project is going to cost a substantial amount of what the project would cost to continue with because of what we've already spent, what you'd have to do to get out of the procurement, and then if the possible removal of the bridge, we're looking at almost half the cost of the bridge anyway, right?
Through the chair, so I'm going to say it depends. It depends a little bit on what ultimately you decide to do. So we have committed, we've spent about $65,000 so far. So that is spent, that is the design, and we may have to spend a little bit more just to conclude the contract as part of the agreement that we have with the designer. If we were to proceed at a later date to construct the bridge, those procurement figures you saw wouldn't be valid. We would have to re-procure it, and it's quite possible a cost increase. I guess there's a chance it could go down, but most likely it's going to increase. The other bids that we did have were also quite a bit higher. So there is a bit of, we certainly if we submit the project again, we would be submitting it at a higher rate. So that we don't get into another budget amendment scenario, because, costs do continue to increase, unfortunately. We know a lot of the trades are also very busy. So it would depend a bit on what you do. We would want to close off those ramping areas, as I said, so that would cost approximately $20,000 or $30,000. If we were to just remove the bridge, and this is using the basis of the existing procurement we have, it would cost between $200,000 and $300,000. We might be able to adjust that a little bit, but if we just strictly go off of what is on that. So it would depend a little bit on how you layer those pieces together. If you removed the entire bridge and decided later on to build it, you would be, doubling some of those costs in terms of all the site works you would have to do. As well, if the bridge is fully removed, there's a good chance you have to do the environmental assessment. And that is estimated to be approximately $70,000. And there's also quite a lengthy time window that would take as well to complete. So just to try to give you some of the information. And again, just that awareness that there is very specific work that has to be done for this bridge, and it has to do very much with the creek. So there's specific windows that you can do in waterworks. There's very specific ways as to how you can do it. And that is all has to do with ministry requirements due to the fish species that are there. Hope that helps.
Member Bennett?
I guess I just wanted some clarification as to what Councillor DeFlavio's idea about the development at the Strikes bowling site, because I know that whenever there's a development, a portion of it has to go towards parkland. And I understand that in the past, that portion has sometimes been put into a basket of funds for recreational development anywhere in Grimsby. So I'm not sure if that's actually true. And I'm just wondering how that would work. I'm not sure about the ins and outs about how that would work, like what the process would be for that, as far as the legalities and everything, and if that would be a possibility, because that sounds like a great idea. But I know that some things haven't quite gone the way they should have in the past, and this would be a great way to help that project, because in the candidates meeting, when this council was elected, that was the thing that came up over and over again, as well as the other recreational needs that we discussed tonight. But it came up, I believe, in other wards as well, other ward meetings as well, because I went to all the meetings, right? So I'd be interested to know how that, would work, and if we could capitalize on that somehow. But you have over $6 million in reserve funds as well.
Director Sweeney?
So I don't know this specific piece as well as planning, so I would want to go back and speak to planning. Definitely, a lot of times when developments do occur, you're right, there are different aspects of that go into community resources. Sometimes that is actually parkland, sometimes it's funds in lieu of parkland, and then there's also DCs, which is DCs are guided by a DC study. So in order to be able to use development charge funds, it does have to be a project that is identified in the study. So there are a couple of pieces to it. I'm not 100% sure what the timing and where exactly that is in terms of a stage as well and how that could work, but I can certainly take that back and see if we can get some more information on that.
Councillor DeFlavio? You're on a timer, by the way.
Yeah, no, this is just to further to Member Bennett's point, that when the property at the marina was completed, I believe we took cash in lieu of parkland there. So, I mean, again, that is very close in proximity. That should be in reserves. That might be money that should be, because that's one of those examples of projects where we take cash because there's no real parkland there. this is one of those times where we should be using that cash to build a park that's right near there. That's the whole point of that cash in lieu. So another thing for you to explore through you, Chair, through our finance department is there already cash in lieu in reserves that's been taken previously in that area that we can redirect towards this project?
Councillor Howe?
There might even be a, excuse me, a quicker way or a more specific way if we just go back to wherever those quotes came from and say our budget amount was $450,000, $460,000, something like that. What do we get for that money? Not what you think we should have. We got that money, what do we get? And that puts everything to bed, wraps it all up in a neat little bow, and it may be something that's still going to be quite functional. Make them do the work.
Director Sweeney?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know that we would be able to do that with the existing procurement, just with the way the procurement rules are, if we wanted to go back and redesign it. However, we did talk as a team quite a bit, and while there's some savings we could find, I don't know that they would substantially get us to that number. A lot of the costs are related to all of the site works too. It's not just the bridge. So I don't think we would get there. I'm not saying we wouldn't try if that was the direction, but I'm not sure we're going to see that substantial of a savings by unless we really, really reduce to the bridge. But I don't know if you'd be happy with that end product.
Councillor Howe?
Depends on how bad they want the job.
Last call. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. So the next Community Services Committee meeting is scheduled for November 28th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Oh, Peach King Center. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Howe did ask me just to give a little update. We are going to be bringing an update to you at the November meeting and also in the December meeting, but happy to report we are advancing along well. We've had some really great meetings with the collective team and really been focusing on reconfirming our budget estimations and our schedule estimations. I think the specific question was when we would see the tender, and just a reminder, because we have chosen construction management methodology, it will not be one tender. There will be multiple tenders. So it does draw out that time frame a little bit more, but that is the methodology that we're using, and we're currently just working as a team to determine what exactly that timeline is. We do expect the first one will be in February, but there will be a series just because of that, that we've chosen that method. But we are happy to report that our construction management firm is really a leader in the industry. They are doing a lot of these projects in and around this area, so they're very, very well versed in the costing and the realities of this. And they've done some of their own costing analysis, and we're really happy to say that as a collective team, we feel confident that we can achieve this project within the budget. We're going to be going through some different exercises, and there will be some different iterations looking at some different value engineering pieces, I'm sure, as we go along. But so far, the comments back have been quite favorable, so I think we're doing quite well. We did take away some feedback from the open house, and I think from some of this table and council table as well. So we are looking at making some changes to the outside, the exterior site. There was a lot of comments really wanting to see that field protected so that it could be continued to be used. And it was well heard as well, I know by a number at this table as well, at looking at perhaps not moving that road and keeping it where it is. So we have taken away those pieces, and we are looking at incorporating them into a bit of a revision.
Are we satisfied with that, Councillor Howe? Okay, perfect. All right, so our next Community Services Committee meeting is scheduled for November 28th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. We've concluded our business, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.